Tiffany James was born on August 18, 1980, in Tampa, Florida. She was the only child of Rosalind James and Turner Humphrey. Her parents were never married and separated soon after her birth. Her father moved away, started a new family, and showed little interest in her. Years later, as an adult, Tiffany decided to locate her father. They spoke, and she assured him that she held no grudges and wanted to keep in touch. This reunion allowed Tiffany to meet her half-siblings and their families, leading to the development of strong, positive relationships. Meanwhile, Rosalind focused on her own life and left Tiffany with her grandparents. Although Tiffany had both biological parents, she was primarily raised by her grandparents. Her mother Rosalind visited occasionally but did not play an active role in her upbringing. It was her aunts, Barbara and Vicky, along with her grandmother Beulah, who took on the parenting responsibilities. They ensured Tiffany attended preschool and school, celebrated her achievements, and supported her in every way. She was an outstanding student with a passion for literature and a creative spirit. She dreamed of opening her own beauty salon and becoming the best in her city. Tiffany was a sociable, popular, and stylish person. She often attracted attention with her looks and confidence, making her appealing to young men. While in high school, she started dating a boy named Derek Andrews, who was a year older. They both believed their love would last forever. In her senior year, Tiffany became pregnant and gave birth to their first child, a son named Derek, on July 26, 1998. This changed her plans for college as she dedicated herself to motherhood. Derek took on various odd jobs to support his family, while Tiffany's family helped them as much as they could. In August 2002, 4-year-old Derek became a big brother when his parents welcomed another son, Darian, named after his paternal grandfather. At this point, Tiffany and Derek were living together in a small rented apartment. Although money was tight, they remained hopeful for their future and dreamed of creating a stable life together. A couple of years later, however, their romantic feelings faded, and they decided to separate amicably. The son stayed with Tiffany while Derek supported them and made an effort to spend time with his children. He eventually began a new relationship but remained committed to being an involved father to Darian and Derek. As a single mother with 2 young sons, Tiffany started to seriously consider her future. She wanted a career that would allow her to provide for her family independently. Since she had not pursued further education after high school, she was eager to change that. Tiffany enrolled in a medical college, aiming to become a cosmetic specialist. Her ultimate goal was to open her own practice or even a clinic where she could turn her passion into a successful business. To manage her finances better, she moved back in with her grandparents, as paying for both tuition and rent was too much of a burden. Her family helped care for her sons whenever she was at work or in class. After finishing her education, she got a job at a private clinic as an assistant to a well-known doctor. She had a steady income and began advancing in her career. For a while, it appeared that everything was finally coming together for her. However, she found herself lacking a strong, supportive partner to lean on during difficult times. In early 2007, Tiffany met a man named Daryl Williams. He was 14 years older than she was and had 3 grown children from a previous marriage. Despite their age difference, this did not hinder their romantic relationship. She believed that he was a mature and trustworthy man, genuinely prepared for a serious commitment. Their relationship developed quickly, and soon, Tiffany, at 27, found herself pregnant. This news shocked both of them, but they were excited, and Daryl proposed to Tiffany, who happily accepted. However, during the routine checkup, she learned she was expecting twins. In March 2008, she welcomed twin girls, whom she named Diamond and Denial. This happy event has brought joy to her life, and she has devoted all her love to her family, cherishing every moment spent together. Tiffany enjoyed taking her children to different events, discovering new activities, and creating lasting memories. She also loved dressing her daughters in matching outfits that gave them a fashionable appearance. Her older sons participated in sports like baseball, track, and swimming, while her twins, Diamond and Denia, began dance classes and rhythmic gymnastics at an early age. As the years went by, the children grew, but Tiffany and Daryl never married. Gradually, their relationship began to deteriorate as they found it increasingly difficult to communicate. Tiffany eventually realized that Daryl was not the person she had thought he was. Their relationship ended when she discovered his infidelity. Without any hesitation, she gathered her children and departed. After separating from Daryl, Tiffany relocated with her family to the quiet town of Brandon, Florida. This community was known for its strong infrastructure, low crime rates, and affordable housing, making it an ideal place to raise a family and start over. Eager to create a stable future, Tiffany completed a hairstyling program and landed a job at one of the top salons in town. She quickly built a loyal clientele and gained a reputation for her talent and creativity. Aspiring to open her own salon one day, she began looking for potential rental locations. Her skills, ambition, and rising reputation established her as one of the most in-demand stylists in the area, paving the way for a bright career ahead. As a single mother of 4, she moved into a spacious rental apartment in a newly built residential complex situated in one of the town's finest neighborhoods. Nearby amenities included a school, a dance studio, and a large sports center, everything she needed for a comfortable and fulfilling life for her family. By 2012, her sons had become more independent and often helped care for their younger sisters. Around this time, Tiffany decided to reconnect with her father and half-siblings. She traveled to Alabama to find them, and their family bonds were restored. They began to stay in touch, visit each other for holidays, and their children quickly grew close. Life was falling into place. Her finances were stable, and she was surrounded by loved ones. Although she felt secure about her future, Tiffany, a young, ambitious, and attractive woman, yearned for romance. She still believed in love and hoped to find a man who would love her and embrace her family, a man with whom she could build a strong and happy home. In 2014, Tiffany started her own small business, which began to thrive. That same year, at 34 years old, she reconnected with Ben, a man she had known in her youth but hadn't seen in nearly 15 years. Their unexpected encounter at a shopping mall marked the start of something special. Initially, they kept their relationship private. Ben was also a single parent who had recently settled in Brandon with his 2 young children. They began as friends, sharing coffee and meaningful conversations. When Ben finally confessed his feelings for Tiffany, she felt like the happiest woman in the world and admitted she felt the same way. Their relationship grew deeper and both families supported it. Tiffany was ecstatic, savoring this newfound happiness without rushing. She kept their romance discreet, sharing details only with her closest friends and family and refraining from posting pictures of them together on social media. Gradually, she prepared for a significant change as they decided to move in together and create a home as one family. On October 1, 2015, Tiffany posted a romantic and mysterious message on her personal social media account. The post featured a photo of 2 hands clasped together, one male and one female, both adorned with wedding bands, set against the backdrop of a Bible. The caption simply read, "Yes." This suggested that she was engaged, but she chose to keep her fiancé's identity a secret for the time being. Tiffany and her family always put a lot of effort into celebrating Halloween. They planned their costumes ahead of time, carved pumpkins into glowing lanterns, and went out to collect candy from their neighbors. By this time, Darian and Derek were old enough to enjoy the holiday with their friends, while the younger twins, Diamond and Denia, still loved going trick-or-treating with their mom. Since they lived in a large apartment complex, going door-to-door wasn't this thrilling. Instead, they visited a nearby neighborhood filled with single-family homes, where Halloween decorations created a festive atmosphere. Families in costumes moved from house to house, and generous homeowners made sure to have plenty of candy, so no one went home empty-handed. That night was supposed to be fun and relaxing, but no one could have predicted the tragedy that was about to unfold. A local woman was home alone, preparing to watch a horror movie to get into the Halloween spirit. The streets outside were quiet, most families had already gone home, and she didn't expect any more trick-or-treaters. Around 9 p.m., she was dozing on the couch with the TV still on when suddenly there was a loud noise, like an explosion, that woke her up. At that moment, her front door, which she had forgotten to lock, swung open. Startled, she quickly got up to shut it. What she saw on her doorstep left her frozen. A figure dressed entirely in black, wearing a hockey mask like the ones from the Friday the 13th movies, stood there. Instead of a machete, the person was holding a shotgun. For a split second, it felt like a scene from a movie or an elaborate Halloween joke. In shock and unsure of her next move, she glanced down and saw a woman lying at the figure's feet, writhing in pain and struggling to move. The masked figure looked down at her for a moment before raising the weapon again. Terrified, the woman ran for her life. She slammed the door just as two more deafening gunshots rang out. Collapsing onto the floor, she covered her head with her hands, fearing she might be next. Then, silence. The stillness was broken by a faint tapping on the window. At first, she ignored it, too frightened to move. But when the tapping came again, she cautiously approached the window and, against her better judgment, looked outside. There stood a young girl, tears streaming down her face. Without thinking of her own safety, the woman rushed to the door to help. Outside, she noticed another young girl sitting on the ground, shocked, hugging her knees. Without hesitation, she brought both girls inside, locked the door, and grabbed her phone to call for emergency services. By that time, other neighbors had heard the chaos and called the authorities. When first responders arrived, they discovered a woman lying in a pool of blood on the pavement. Despite her critical injuries, she was still alive. Paramedics did everything they could, but unfortunately, on the way to the hospital, she died from her wounds. The victim had no identification, and the two young girls were too traumatized to speak. However, as more neighbors gathered, they quickly recognized the woman, Tiffany, who is the owner of a local hair salon, along with her twin daughters, Diamond and Denaya. Authorities immediately contacted Tiffany's relatives, while Diamond and Denaya were taken to the hospital for evaluation. Fortunately, neither child had suffered any physical injuries, but they were deeply traumatized. Mental health professionals were brought in to help them process the event. Many people had been out celebrating that night, and several witnesses recalled the horrifying scene. However, piecing together the full story was challenging, as many struggled to believe what they had seen. It all felt too surreal, almost like a staged performance. Meanwhile, the masked attacker slipped into the crowd of costumed revelers and disappeared without a trace. Neighbors reported seeing a silver Chevrolet sedan parked near the house shortly before the incident. Witnesses noted that the car sped off after the first loud noise but stopped a short distance away moments later. It was uncertain whether the driver fled in a panic or had a connection to the attack. Unfortunately, no one saw the license plate, and no one could identify the driver's gender. Adding to the difficulty, there were no security cameras in the area to capture the incident. Witnesses could not provide even a basic description of the suspect, who was fully covered in a costume, hood, hockey mask, and gloves. They only agreed that the attacker was slightly taller than average and had a muscular build. At the crime scene, Tiffany's handbag was found on the ground, with its strap torn and its contents strewn about. Initially, investigators considered the possibility of a robbery gone wrong, but this theory was quickly dismissed. The cash inside the purse was untouched, and Tiffany was still wearing several pieces of gold jewelry. Nothing had been stolen. Moreover, it seemed unlikely that such a violent act would occur over a simple mugging, especially with a shotgun involved. The aggression of the attack suggested that it was personal. But who would want to harm Tiffany, a cherished mother and respected community member? Investigators began by questioning her ex-partners and her current boyfriend. Tiffany had been separated from her former partners, Derek Andrews and Daryl Williams, for years, and any previous conflicts had long since dissipated. Her current partner, Ben, remained a mystery since Tiffany had kept their relationship private, revealing little to friends and family. Due to this secrecy, detectives felt it necessary to question him urgently. Officers arrived at Ben's house around 5 a.m. the next morning. Despite the early hour, all the lights in the house were on, and Ben was found sitting by the front door with a shotgun. The officers ordered him to drop the weapon and raise his hands, which he complied with, insisting he was not involved in the attack. He then pleaded with the officers to protect his children, explaining that he had learned about the crime just hours earlier and was fearful that the attacker might come after him next. He felt a strong need to protect his family. During the questioning, Ben shared that in the months prior to the incident, Tiffany had told him about someone she believed was stalking her. She suspected it might be her ex-fiancé, Daryl, who was also the father of her twin daughters, Diamond and Denia. Their separation had been difficult, and they were currently engaged in a custody battle over the girls. Ben confirmed his whereabouts on Halloween night with a strong alibi. He stated that he, Tiffany, and their children had gone trick-or-treating earlier that evening. Later, he took his children to visit relatives while Tiffany and the twins intended to return to their home briefly before staying the night at his place. However, she never showed up. Almost at midnight, Tiffany's oldest son called to deliver the devastating news. Once investigators verified Ben's alibi, they released him and allowed him to go home. The focus then shifted to Daryl. Was he involved in such a violent act? Detectives were skeptical. Could he really have committed something so horrific in front of his own daughters, leaving them with lifelong trauma? On November 1st, officers visited Daryl's last known address but found that he no longer lived there. Instead, they encountered his adult daughter, who informed them that her father had moved in with his new girlfriend 6 months ago. She was visibly shaken when she heard about Tiffany's tragic death and was clearly in shock. His daughter disclosed concerning information about his short temper and controlling behavior. He was known to be domineering and would become furious when things didn't go his way. Additionally, he had a strong interest in firearms and owned a shotgun. Daryl's daughter explained that her father's breakup with Tiffany had been very contentious. He harbored deep resentment over having to pay child support and had fought hard for full custody of their twins, even though he knew he had little chance of winning. However, she noted that if Tiffany were gone, he would have had a better chance of gaining custody of the girls. Her daughter described her father as ruthless and believed he was capable of committing a crime. After speaking with her, investigators went to Daryl's workplace, a large chemical plant. His supervisor spoke highly of him, describing him as a dedicated worker who could handle the workload of 2 people and was always willing to take on extra shifts. However, Daryl's aggressive demeanor often led to conflicts with co-workers, sometimes resulting in physical confrontations. Notably, on the night of November 1st, Daryl, for the first time, refused a last-minute shift change, citing personal reasons. This unusual behavior raised further suspicions, as it left him without a confirmed alibi for the night of the crime. Detectives visited the home of Daryl's new girlfriend, Rosalind. They noticed a silver Chevrolet sedan in the driveway that matched the description of a car seen near the crime scene. When Rosalind answered the door and saw the officers, she appeared nervous. However, after learning the reason for their visit, she insisted that Daryl had stayed with her all night and had not left the house. Since there was no physical evidence to hold Daryl, the investigators decided to interview the main witnesses, Daryl and Tiffany's daughters, Diamond and Denia. They were still struggling to cope with the trauma. Denia was mostly silent, experienced nightmares, and couldn't sleep without the lights on. Diamond seemed to handle things better but would break down in tears whenever the conversation shifted to that tragic night. To help them, a skilled psychologist was brought in to gently support the sisters through their trauma, and over time, they began to share their experiences. They revealed that while staying with their father, they often saw a mysterious man delivering folders of papers to him. One day, when their father stepped out, they couldn't resist their curiosity and peeked inside the folders, discovering photos of their home, pictures of their mother in various locations around town, and even images of Ben's house. This leads them to realize that their father has employed a private investigator to follow their mother, Tiffany. Even more concerning was the fact that just 2 days before Tiffany's death, she had won full custody of the twins in court, requiring Daryl to pay child support, a situation he strongly opposed. With this new evidence, the police obtained a warrant for Daryl's arrest. Given his known history with firearms and the likelihood that he might resist, the officers decided it would be safer to arrest him at work, where security was tight, minimizing the risk of an armed confrontation. When the officers arrived, Daryl appeared shocked but did not resist arrest. He calmly allowed them to handcuff him and requested to speak with a lawyer. Initially, both he and Rosalind denied any involvement in the crime. However, investigators found phone records and GPS data showing they were both near the crime scene that night. Rosalind was the first to cooperate. In exchange for a lighter sentence, she agreed to testify against Daryl, stating that she had not known his exact intentions, she had merely driven him to the location and waited in the car. When she heard a loud noise, she panicked and drove off but slowed down to let Daryl jump in before fleeing. She claimed that she later provided him with an alibi out of fear for her own safety. Daryl faced charges of first-degree homicide, which could lead to the death penalty. In an attempt to escape this severe punishment, he tried to shift the blame. Upon learning that Rosalind had testified against him, he accused her of having an affair with his adult son and claimed that they had conspired to frame him. He was willing to implicate his own son in a serious crime to save himself. However, investigators quickly disproved his claims by thoroughly examining the evidence and confirming that his son had no involvement in the events of that night. With no alternatives available, Daryl eventually accepted a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. In April 2017, at the age of 49, he was found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after at least 25 years. On April 27, 2024, the quiet community of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, was shaken to its core by the devastating death of 30-year-old Micah Miller, a vibrant and ambitious woman who was found dead in Lumber River State Park, North Carolina. She had been married to a local pastor, John Paul Miller, for nearly 7 years. However, the picture-perfect facade of their relationship hid a much darker truth. What secrets lay hidden within Micah and John's marriage? How could a man of God allegedly commit such a profound betrayal of trust? Micah and John first crossed paths when she was just 14 or 15 years old, as she and her family began attending the Solid Rock Church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. At that time, John was serving as the leader of the youth group in the same church. Despite the significant age gap, John was 28 years old when he first met Micah. The two developed a friendship. When Micah turned 18, it was John who officiated her marriage to one of his friends. Both Micah and her husband were involved in the church, with Micah having several responsibilities, including working with the media team while her husband was in charge of the sports ministry. After some time, Micah became John's secretary and babysitter for his growing family. John was already married and was the father of 5 children. One day, while Micah was babysitting for John's kids, his wife discovered her husband and the babysitter in a compromising position. It was clear that the two had developed feelings for each other. The fallout from this revelation was swift. Both Micah's and John's marriages ended in divorce in 2016. Just 2 years later, the 23-year-old Micah found herself thrust into a new role as the stepmother to John's 5 children, becoming the pastor's wife. In her position, Micah took on even greater responsibilities within the church, leading worship, overseeing the women's and youth ministries, even traveling abroad on mission trip. Her dedication to her faith and the congregation was evident, but the true nature of her relationship with John remained shrouded in darkness. As Micah's role within the Solid Rock Church grew, so did the allegations of abuse and manipulation that she endured at the hands of her husband. According to Micah's own sworn affidavit, she was subjected to a torrent of mistreatment, including emotional, spiritual, financial, and even physical abuse, throughout her marriage. Micah's family and friends would later come forward with harrowing details of the torment she faced, alleging that John had hacked into Micah's personal accounts, sending messages designed to discredit her. Despite the overwhelming control John exerted over Micah, she refused to be cowed. In January 2023, Micah made the courageous decision to separate from her husband, taking the first steps toward reclaiming her freedom. This decision, however, was not an easy one, as Micah knew all too well the risks she faced in defying John's will. Just months later, in October, Micah filed for divorce, determined to break free from the shackles of her abusive marriage. This bold move was undoubtedly a testament to Micah's strength and resilience, as she faced the daunting prospect of rebuilding her life in the wake of the trauma she had endured. Micah's choice to leave John came at a significant cost. She reached out to the police multiple times after feeling that someone was following her, which added to her anxiety during her attempt to end the marriage. Micah discovered her tires had been slashed and found a tracking device on her car, deepening her fears about John's obsessive need to control her. These events made Micah feel even more vulnerable as she faced the challenges of divorce, constantly anxious about the possible consequences of her decisions. In the months leading up to Micah's tragic death, a series of troubling incidents heightened the sense of danger and mistrust in her relationship with John. As Micah tried to free herself from the marriage and establish her independence, John resorted to increasingly desperate and threatening methods to keep her under his control. In February 2024, Micah's sense of freedom was drastically affected when John had her hospitalized against her will, claiming it was for her health. He alleged that she wasn't taking her medication properly, using this as a reason for her forced admission to a psychiatric facility. However, Micah's family and friends saw through John's deceit, believing he had exaggerated her mental health issues to gain more control over her. As the divorce proceedings progressed, Micah applied for spousal support, with a hearing set for June 5. This action was a bold statement, indicating that she would not allow John to manipulate her finances indefinitely. However, tensions mounted between them in mid-March when Micah asked John for $2,000 for a trip. John refused her request, suspecting that she would not use the money for its intended purpose. He had ongoing control over their financial decisions. At the same time as this financial dispute, John used his power of attorney to have Micah hospitalized. While she was in the hospital, John took her purse, car keys, and retrieved her car from a parking lot. He claimed he did this because he was worried about what Micah might do upon her release. On the morning of April 27th, surveillance video showed Micah leaving her apartment in Myrtle Beach at 11:38 a.m. She then drove to Dick's pawn shop, where security cameras recorded her entering at 12:12 p.m. and purchasing a Sig Sauer handgun on her own. Micah's phone search history indicated that she had looked up directions to Lumber River State Park, a secluded area in North Carolina. Just before 3 p.m. that day, she made a frantic call to 911. During the call, Micah asked the dispatcher to locate her phone, stating that she was in a national park and was afraid for her life. Her last words to the operator revealed her tragic intentions: she was about to take her own life. This call has sparked intense debate and speculation. Some online conspiracy theorists claim they heard a man's voice in the background, implying that Micah might have been pressured or coerced into making the call. Others argued that the entire call was potentially fabricated, possibly created using AI technology as part of a complex plan involving John. Just over an hour and a half after Micah made her 911 call, Johnny Jacobs, a North Carolina fisherman, discovered a woman's scattered belongings. Jacobs' discovery helped lead law enforcement to Micah's body, which was found in a swampy, wooded area just off the Lumber River. Jacobs reported that afternoon, he heard someone crying in the woods, followed by gunshots. While searching for the source of the sounds, he found Micah's belongings but not her body. He later told media outlets that he saw 3 people in a boat near the scene at the time of the shooting. Jacobs said he asked the 3 boaters, "Did you hear any gunshots?" and they all responded affirmatively. However, the boaters denied hearing any crying. Jacobs eventually traced the source of the sounds to an opening in the river. 20 yards into the opening, he found Micah's fanny pack about 2 feet from the water's edge, along with her cell phone and glasses. According to Jacobs, the fanny pack contained Micah's driver's license, bank cards, keys, wallet, credit cards, and a small Bible. Micah had died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Her Honda Accord was located in the park's parking lot, where authorities found a Sig Sauer gun case, a box of ammunition, and a receipt for a firearm she had bought earlier that day. The North Carolina medical examiner ruled that her death was a result of taking her own life by gunshot. However, Micah's family strongly disagreed with this finding, noting the many bruises, scratches, and defensive wounds on her body. They believed that Micah may have been forced or pressured into taking her life rather than doing so willingly. John insists he had no role in Micah's death, claiming he was not present at the time she died. He states he was at a sporting event in Charleston, South Carolina, which is about 3 hours from where Micah's body was discovered. Several eyewitnesses have confirmed that he was at the event. His vehicle also was seen traveling on Highway 17 in Horry County at 2:22 p.m. on April 27. The investigation into Micah's death faced challenges due to many inconsistencies and unanswered questions. For example, the presence of multiple shell casings at the scene raised suspicions that Micah could have been the victim of foul play instead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Additionally, Micah's family and friends believe her actions and behavior in the days before her death did not reflect someone contemplating end one's own life. She had a hair appointment scheduled for the following week and was planning to go to church with her family the Sunday. The investigation into Micah's death involved both the Robeson County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, who worked together to gather evidence and understand the circumstances of her death. However, public demand for justice grew stronger, as Micah's family and supporters did not believe the official claim that she committed end one's own life. A key focus of the investigation was the suspicion of John's possible involvement in her death. Allegations of abuse, manipulation, and financial misconduct in their marriage contributed to the belief that there was more to the story. As the investigation progressed, John's behavior and comments raised further doubts about his role in the tragedy. Reports described him as increasingly erratic, with actions and statements that seemed aimed at confusing, manipulating others. Just a day after Micah's body was found in the Lumber River, John made an alarming announcement to the Solid Rock Church congregation. Instead of addressing them with the seriousness the situation warranted, his tone was casual and disconcerting. He began by stating that there wouldn't be an altar call that day and asked everyone to stand for an announcement. John then instructed the congregation to leave the church quietly and not to talk about the announcement while still inside. In a strange turn of events, he urged them to keep attending church and fulfilling their responsibilities, mentioning that he would be taking a break for several days or weeks. He then shocked everyone by revealing that his wife had died, claiming it was self-inflicted and had happened in North Carolina. John's behavior during this announcement was troubling. He seemed to be fueled by adrenaline, requested the congregation to pray for him and his children. He also mentioned that Micah had been struggling mentally and needed medication. His comments were particularly alarming because Micah's body had only been discovered less than 24 hours earlier. The coroner had not yet determined the cause of death. Meanwhile, the Robeson County Police were still investigating the case as a suspicious death, yet John had already labeled it a suicide, attributing it to Micah's mental health issues, despite the significant evidence of abuse and manipulation that had existed in their marriage. John denied any wrongdoing, asserting that the allegations of abuse were untrue and that he never harmed Micah. However, Micah's family and friends saw through his claims and refused to believe him. After Micah's death, John's actions raised further alarm. He insisted on immediate cremation and would not allow her family to see her body unless they complied with his demands. Adding to the growing suspicion, John hired a lawyer and sent letters demanding an end to the accusations against him. These letters contained subtle threats, implying that he wanted to silence anyone who questioned his role in Micah's death. As more details about John's behavior came to light, the public's call for justice intensified. Micah's family, friends, the surrounding community demanded answers and urged authorities to take action against those responsible for her death. As the investigation into Micah's death progressed, the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office became involved, bringing their resources and expertise to the case. However, it was unclear which specific areas the federal authorities were investigating. Micah's family expressed significant concerns about the autopsy, particularly because there was no information regarding gunshot residue. They also questioned why the authorities had not conducted these tests. Additionally, the family was worried about the toxicology report, raising the issue of whether Micah was mentally sound at the time of her death or if she was under the influence of substances. There was no documentation to clarify this. The family's concerns grew when Micah's body was cremated shortly after her death, a decision made by John, which prevented the possibility of a second independent autopsy. This action only increased suspicions that John might be hiding something. As the investigation continued, various theories arose regarding John's possible role in Micah's death. Some suggested that he may have used his boat to transport Micah's body to the remote location where it was discovered. Security footage from the pawn shop where Micah bought the gun also faced scrutiny, with some believing that the timestamps were altered to support a specific narrative. Additionally, the fact that John had been reported to the police for transferring church funds into his personal account raised further suspicions about his motives and integrity. One of the most troubling findings from the investigation was the discovery of Micah's detailed diaries, which she had written to document the abuse she experienced from John. John had contacted Micah's family, trying to obtain these documents, which increased suspicions that they contained evidence against him. Micah's family stated that these diaries now belonged to Micah's sister, Sierra Francis, who was appointed as the special administrator of Micah's estate. The diaries are considered crucial evidence in the ongoing investigation, as they are expected to clarify the true nature of John and Micah's relationship and the circumstances leading to her tragic death. Micah's family and friends strongly believe that John's abusive behavior, manipulation contributed to her decision to take her own life. They highlighted the numerous police reports she filed, which detailed her fears for her safety and the harassment she suffered at John's hands. Additionally, allegations of multiple affairs and financial misconduct further reinforced the perception that John was a man driven by his own desires and willing to go to great lengths to maintain control over others. The tragic death of Micah Miller sent shockwaves through the community, led to various reactions and consequences. Following this, Solid Rock Church, where John was a pastor, became a focal point of the controversy. Church leaders reported receiving numerous harassing phone calls and messages from people seeking answers and demanding accountability. The situation was equally troubling for those directly involved in the investigation. The coroner who examined Micah's body received threats. Micah's family, particularly her sister Sierra, firmly rejected the official explanation of her death. They believed that Micah's death was planned and staged by John, and they were resolved to find the truth, no matter the challenges. Their unwavering dedication to seeking justice for Micah demonstrated their love and commitment, alongside their strong belief that the authorities had not thoroughly investigated the circumstances of her death. Meanwhile, Jacobs has become one of the most controversial figures in the Micah Miller case. On March 14, 2025, at the intersection of Iona Church Road and Raynham Road, a rural intersection 2 miles from his home, Jacobs, a key witness in the case, died in a collision between 2 vehicles. Death of key witness fuels belief in conspiracy theories. As more information about the case became available, the public's demand for action against John intensified. Micah's supporters, both in the community and on social media, called for authorities to hold John responsible for his alleged involvement in her death. Micah's family's relentless pursuit of justice and the continuous calls for accountability all highlight the deep, lasting effects of this tragedy on everyone involved. On the evening of October 24, 2009, 58-year-old Christy Marks, a successful professional and caring mother, set out from her home filled with hope. She was on her way to reconnect with her daughter, Taylor Marks, who was 20 years old. She had been adopted by Christy years earlier. Earlier that day, Taylor had called Christy, asking her to pick her up from her boyfriend Brian Smith's house. This request was a surprising sign of reconciliation after a difficult period between them. Around 7 p.m., Christy arrived at Brian's house, located in Akron, Ohio, an area known for its high crime rates and general unease. Despite her concerns, Christy parked her car, approached the door, and knocked. Taylor answered. Christy, unable to hide her happiness, embraced her. There was no apparent tension between them. Shortly after, Brian joined them to help escort both women back to Christy's car. To Christy, everything felt normal, even though the neighborhood made her uneasy. As they were heading to the car, the situation turned dire. A man suddenly appeared behind them, wielding a knife. The attack was quick and brutal. Christy was stabbed multiple times in the chest and face before she could defend herself and collapsed on the ground. Taylor screamed, hurried to call emergency services. In the recording of her call, she was heard pleading for help and explaining that her mother had been attacked. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, Brian took the phone from her. He calmly provided their location and described what happened, stating that the attacker had fled, though his calm demeanor was unsettling given the violent situation. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Christie was alive but in critical condition and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked hard to save her. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, Christie Marks was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. The main cause of death was the multiple stab wounds inflicted with great force. At the crime scene, law enforcement noticed several discrepancies. Christie's purse, which contained her belongings, cash, keys, and documents, was found untouched near where the attack occurred. This was unusual for a robbery. Additionally, a bloody knife, believed to be the weapon used, was found in nearby bushes. These discoveries raised doubts about the witnesses' accounts and hinted at potential deeper motives for the crime. The police started questioning everyone involved: Taylor, Brian, and Brian's friend, Troy Purdy II, who had been in the house during the attack. Their stories were inconsistent and contradictory. Taylor reported only seeing the silhouette of the attacker, describing someone in red sneakers and a flannel shirt. Brian claimed he tried to intervene and got injured during the struggle with the assailant, while Troy maintained he never left the house and saw nothing. Given their statements, investigators soon suspected that none of them were being truthful. Evidence from the crime scene, such as blood trails and the positioning of the weapon, indicated that the crime was staged. Authorities thought the attack was not random; it appeared to be well planned. During the first night of the investigation, detectives focused on one critical question: why was Christie targeted, and which of the people present knew the truth about what happened? Taylor Marks was born on March 29, 1989. Her biological mother chose to place her into foster care right after her birth, leaving her under the care of the adoption system. Little is known about her biological family, except that Taylor has at least one older sibling, although she was the only one placed in foster care. This marked the start of a new chapter in her life, one that, despite its difficult beginnings, eventually brought her warmth and love. A few months later, Taylor joined the Marks family. Bruce and Christie Marks, a couple who had always dreamed of having a child but were unable to conceive, felt she was destined to be part of their family the moment they first saw her. At that time, the Marks family was financially secure. Bruce worked in a senior role at a major telecommunications company, while Christie efficiently managed their home life and family activities. They had a large, supportive extended family that included grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who all loved, cared for Taylor. Bruce and Christie were committed to her upbringing, providing her with a high-quality education at prestigious private schools, enrolling her in dance classes, and encouraging her involvement in various extracurricular activities. As a result, Taylor had access to opportunities that many of her peers did not. Taylor had a particularly strong bond with Bruce, who was seen by family friends as her hero, always fulfilling her wishes and offering unwavering support. In contrast, her relationship with Christie was more challenging. Christie was stricter and had higher expectations. While these differing parenting styles did not create major problems during Taylor's early years, tensions began to rise as she entered her teenage years. Christie's increasing oversight and demands led to frequent conflicts between them, causing strain in their relationship. During this time, when Taylor was around 10 years old, Bruce and Christie experienced marital problems, ultimately resulting in their divorce. Taylor reported that her parents' separation had a significant emotional impact on her. She felt that Christie started directing her frustrations towards Taylor, worsening their relationship. A significant turning point in Taylor's life occurred in 2002 when she was only 13 years old. Her father, Bruce, unexpectedly passed away after falling into a diabetic coma. This loss was extremely painful for Taylor, as she not only lost her father but also her main source of emotional support. Shortly after Bruce's death, her grandfather, with whom she was very close, also passed away. These two losses deeply affected Taylor. Following Bruce's death, Christie inherited a large estate, including a considerable amount of money. She decided to use part of this inheritance to buy a new home in Akron, Ohio, hoping that a change of environment would help them start anew. However, despite this move, Taylor's emotional well-being worsened. She became more isolated, struggled academically, and had increasing conflicts with Christie. Christie wanted to support her daughter, but her approach often felt too controlling. To make up for the loss of Bruce, she tried to provide Taylor with material comforts, going out of her way to give her everything she wanted and more. Despite this, their emotional bond continued to weaken. Christy wished for Taylor to take responsibility, complete her education, and eventually continue the family legacy. However, Taylor was uninterested in these plans, instead dreaming of breaking free from what she perceived as imposed expectations. As Taylor entered her teenage years, her desire for independence conflicted with her mother's expectations, leading to increasing arguments that intensified over time. Taylor saw her mother as a constant source of pressure, and tensions rose each year. Concerned about her daughter's falling grades, Taylor's lack of focus in school, and apparent disregard for her future, Christy attempted to enforce strict rules to guide Taylor in what she believed was the right path. Taylor perceived her mother's actions as a way to control her life, which made her want to rebel even more. Christy's constant comments about Taylor's looks, clothing choices, and friends further strained their relationship. High school was especially tough for Taylor. Even with the privileges her mother provided, she started using them carelessly. Rather than concentrating on her studies, she chose to hang out with friends, ignoring Christy's efforts to keep her disciplined. Although Christy tried different approaches to guide her daughter, these attempts only pushed them further apart. In 2008, Taylor graduated from high school. A significant turning point occurred. Although Christy offered financial support and opportunities for Taylor to attend any college, Taylor was not interested in furthering her education. Christy encouraged her to at least give it a try, which led Taylor to enroll at a university in Akron. However, just a month into her first semester, she decided to drop out. This choice was devastating for Christy, highlighting the growing divide between their visions for Taylor's future. When persuasion failed, Christy opted for a more direct approach. She presented Taylor with an ultimatum: either find the job and support herself or move out of the house. This expectation aligned with American cultural norms, where young adults are urged to take responsibility for their lives as they reach adulthood. Unfortunately, Taylor interpreted her mother's words as harsh and threatening, escalating the conflict between them. The situation worsened in May 2009 when Taylor met Brian Smith, a 21-year-old known for his rebellious nature. Brian lived with his mother and sister in a low-income neighborhood. Taylor was attracted to him, viewing him as a way to break free from her mother's control. People who knew Brian warned that he had a bad temper and needed to dominate his relationships, but Taylor had no change of mind. Christy disapproved of the relationship, worried about Brian's behavior and its potential impact on her daughter. She tried to stop Taylor from seeing him and even forbade him from visiting their home, but this only made Taylor more determined to pursue the relationship. Soon after, Taylor moved in with Brian, leaving her mother's house behind. However, life with Brian was not as she had hoped. Initially, their relationship appeared promising, but it quickly became evident that Brian was controlling and aggressive. Taylor dealt with jealousy, control, and frequent bursts of anger from him. Even so, she refused to return home, seeing it as a sign of weakness. Concerned for Taylor's well-being, Christy continued to support her by providing essential items and staying in touch, hoping that Taylor would come to realize her mistakes. The tension between Christy and Taylor reached a peak when Christy offered Taylor a chance to return home. She could come back if she either continued her education or found a job. To help her, Christy also offered to provide a car, an apartment, and a job at her company. However, Taylor showed little interest in these options. Despite the challenges, her tumultuous relationship with Brian continued. Christy hoped that, in time, Taylor would realize her mistakes and return home to take on more responsibilities. Sadly, this hope would never materialize. As the years passed, the rift in their relationship widened, leading to a tragic outcome. When Taylor moved in with Brian, she thought she was gaining the freedom she had long desired. However, this freedom quickly turned into a series of restrictions. Life with Brian was very different from what she had expected. He enforced strict rules and scrutinized every aspect of her life. Taylor, who was used to a certain degree of comfort and independence, found herself in a situation where she had to obey Brian's demands. Brian's control over Taylor grew increasingly extreme. He frequently checked her phone, read her text messages, and closely monitored where she went. Even her conversations with Christy became a source of conflict. Brian persuaded Taylor that her mother was trying to manipulate her and limit her independence. His influence intensified the rift between Taylor and Christy, who kept trying to stay in touch and maintain their communication. In Brian's home, Taylor felt completely isolated. He not only limited her social interactions but also manipulated her emotions, making her believe he was the only one who truly understood her. During arguments, Brian exhibited aggressive behavior, breaking things and making threats. After these outbursts, he demanded her total loyalty and constantly reminded her of how much she depended on him. The situation was made worse by Brian's family. His mother, Tammy, chose not to intervene, effectively supporting Brian's behavior. His younger sister also contributed to controlling Taylor by watching her closely when Brian was not around, creating an environment where Taylor's every action was monitored. Taylor's financial ties to her mother were another significant issue in her relationship with Brian. Knowing about Christy's wealth and Taylor's potential inheritance, Brian was determined to keep control over her. He often blamed her mother for her problems, driving a wedge between them. Under Brian's influence, Taylor started avoiding her mother. Even when Christy came to help her daughter, Brian stayed distant and dismissive, discouraging Taylor from accepting her mother's support, insisting they could manage on their own. Despite Brian's efforts, Christy continued to care for Taylor, providing her with necessities and encouraging her to return home. By the summer of 2009, the tension between Taylor, Brian, and Christy had intensified. After months of living with Brian, Taylor had become completely reliant on him. As Brian's control grew and his aggression escalated, a new plan emerged, something that initially felt unlikely but quickly became more tangible. This idea was driven by increasing pressure, shared dissatisfaction, and financial motivations. The plan was to eliminate Christy permanently, which would give them access to her assets. For Taylor, this was a way to cut her last connections to her mother and achieve financial independence. For Brian, it was a chance to secure his control over Taylor and use her inheritance to improve his own situation. The idea of committing a crime started to spread among their close friends. Brian's 19-year-old friend, Troy Purdy, who often visited their home, joined these discussions. Being younger and impressionable, Troy was seen as the perfect choice for the plan. What began as jokes or hypothetical situations eventually grew more serious. The planning took place gradually, with careful attention to detail. Brian and Taylor discussed how to make the crime appear as if it were a robbery or a random attack. They decided that any evidence left at the scene should suggest spontaneous violence rather than a planned crime. Troy was selected to carry out the act to keep Brian and Taylor from being directly linked to it. Troy agreed to participate because of his loyalty to Brian and didn't question the plan when asked. In return for his involvement, Troy was promised $5,000, which Taylor expected to come from her inheritance once the legal matters were settled. They paid special attention to choosing a weapon. Taylor mentioned that Brian's mother, Tammy, even bought a knife for the plan, but it was later rejected due to its size and weight. Eventually, Troy was tasked with finding a suitable weapon. He chose a lightweight knife that was easy to hide and carry. A crucial part of their preparation was observing Christy's habits. They knew Christy frequently visited Brian's house to see Taylor, making her an easy target since she usually came alone under the pretense of picking up her daughter. This detail was included in their plan. They envisioned Christy arriving at the house, and the attack happening as she was leaving or near her car. Just before the plan was implemented, Taylor took a crucial step to ensure everything would go smoothly. She called her mother and asked for a ride home, implying she wanted to return. This call was intended to put Christy at ease, making her less suspicious about Taylor's true intentions. Throughout their discussions, Taylor appeared confident and committed. According to Troy, she was not just involved in planning but was also determined to follow through. Although her relationship with her mother was strained, taking such a significant action was a big deal. Taylor explained her involvement by referring to years of resentment and a strong desire to break free from her mother's control. Meanwhile, Brian kept the process on track, persuading Taylor that this was the only way to solve her issues. By the evening of October 24, 2009, everything was in place. Taylor was aware that the plan was shifting from theory to action. Taylor remained calm and focused, convinced this was the best way forward for them. For Taylor and Brian, it represented the start of a new chapter in their lives. That day began as an ordinary day for Christy Marks but ended in tragedy. That evening, Taylor called her mother to say she wanted to come home. For Christy, this unexpected phone call brought joy after months of tension. She viewed it as a chance to reconnect with her daughter. Christy quickly packed her things, got in her car, and drove to Brian's house, unaware that she was heading into a carefully orchestrated crime. Christy arrived at around 7 p.m. and parked her car near the house. She walked to the front door, where Taylor welcomed her with a smile and a hug, signaling a potential reconciliation. Brian watched from a distance as they interacted, while Troy stayed inside to avoid raising any suspicion. As Christy and Taylor walked toward the car, with Brian following closely behind, everything seemed normal. However, everything changed when they reached the car. Troy suddenly emerged from the house with a knife and attacked Christy. She had no time to react as Troy stabbed her multiple times in the chest and face. The assault was quick and brutal, leaving Christy unable to defend herself. She collapsed to the ground with over 10 stab wounds. This was not a robbery, it was a targeted attack intended to kill her. Taylor stood nearby, observing the attack unfold. Later, she claimed she didn't intervene because she was scared of Troy, but surveillance footage revealed that she showed no signs of panic or distress. Brian also did not intervene, insisting that his role was to protect the women, yet he took no action to stop Troy. After the attack, Taylor called emergency services, her voice tense as she urgently requested an ambulance. Brian then took over the call, acting as the coordinator. He calmly provided the dispatcher with details about their location and the type of assistance required. His unemotional tone raised suspicions among law enforcement officials who later listened to the call. Troy, the attacker, discarded the knife in a nearby bush and fled the scene. He later claimed that he had acted out of emotional distress, but evidence suggested his actions were premeditated. Following Christy Marks's tragic death, the investigation started right away. Police arrived at the scene within minutes of the emergency call. They found evidence that raised immediate doubts: a knife hidden in the bushes, Christy's purse untouched with all her belongings, and no signs of robbery. These details did not support the theory of a random attack. Investigators began by interviewing the main individuals involved: Taylor, Brian, and Troy. They were interviewed separately to avoid any possibility of collaboration. However, their stories did not match and raised suspicions as the police noticed inconsistencies in their statements. The crucial evidence was obtained from surveillance footage near the crime scene. The video showed Taylor and Brian standing close by while Troy attacked Christy. Neither of them attempted to stop the assault. This footage became a pivotal element in the investigation. With this evidence, detectives brought the suspects back for additional questioning. Under the strain of the evidence presented, Troy was the first to confess. He stated that the attack was planned in advance, claimed that Taylor had orchestrated the scheme. Troy explained that she had approached him and Brian with the plan, assuring them of a financial reward from her expected inheritance after her mother's death. Troy admitted that his role was to carry out the attack while Brian was tasked with creating an alibi by making it look like a robbery. He also confessed to intentionally injuring Brian to strengthen the staged scenario's credibility. His admission completely contradicted Taylor's earlier assertion that the attack was random. When Brian heard about Troy's confession, he changed his story as well. He supported Troy's claim that Taylor had come up with the plan but denied being actively involved. Brian stated that while he didn't agree with the attack, he felt he couldn't stop Taylor and Troy. He also claimed he didn't know the full details of the plan until the last moment, which appeared to minimize his involvement. Faced with growing evidence and accusations, Taylor initially denied her participation. However, her account became more inconsistent over time. Investigators observed that she started contradicting herself, and her behavior indicated she was trying to conceal the truth. Eventually, under the pressure of the evidence, Taylor admitted to discussing the plan with Brian and Troy. The investigation revealed that the crime was carefully planned, with every detail considered, from selecting the weapon to staging fake injuries. The financial motive mentioned by both Troy and Brian became a key focus for the prosecution. Taylor confessed that her ongoing conflict with her mother influenced her decision, but she maintained that she didn't expect the situation to end in tragedy. The police quickly understood what had occurred. Taylor Marks, Brian Smith, and Troy Purdy were arrested and charged in connection with Christy Marks's death. While this marked the end of the initial investigation phase, the legal proceedings were just beginning. The court would assess their levels of responsibility and determine their sentences. The trial for Christy Marks's case started in late 2009. The defendants faced intense public attention due to the violent nature of the crime and their connections to the victim. The prosecution presented a strong case supported by extensive evidence, witness testimonies, and video recordings. A key piece of evidence was the surveillance footage showing Taylor and Brian standing by without attempting to intervene during the attack on Christy. Moreover, Troy's confession, which detailed the conspiracy and his involvement in the crime, played a crucial role in the case. Investigators shared text messages from Taylor's phone where she discussed her troubled relationship with her mother and her wish to be independent. They also uncovered evidence of a financial motive, noting that Taylor was set to inherit a significant sum after Christy's death. Christy possessed considerable assets, including real estate, a business, and savings. Defense attorneys for Taylor, Brian, and Troy tried to argue that their clients were not fully responsible for the crime. Taylor's lawyer insisted that she was heavily influenced by Brian and lacked the ability to act on her own. He attributed her vulnerability to the emotional turmoil following her father's death and the pressure from her mother. Brian claimed he had no direct role in the crime, with his lawyer stating he was shocked and unaware of the plan until it unfolded, preventing him from intervening. Meanwhile, Troy, who initially confessed, tried to alter his story during the trial, asserting that he acted under Brian's coercion. During the proceedings, Troy accepted a plea deal to admit his guilt and testify against the others, resulting in a life sentence without parole, which spared him from the death penalty. Realizing her situation was dire, Taylor also pleaded guilty during the hearings. She gave a heartfelt statement where she expressed regret for her actions, explaining that her conflicts with her mother and the influence of Brian led her to take part in the crime. However, the prosecutors insisted that her involvement was intentional and well-planned. Brian, on the other hand, initially claimed he was not guilty but later acknowledged his role when presented with undeniable evidence. He argued that his participation was minor and that he never meant for the crime to happen, but the court saw this as an effort to minimize his accountability. In 2010, the court issued its verdicts. Taylor Marks and Brian Smith were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy, resulting in life sentences without the possibility of parole. Although Taylor expressed remorse, her statement about losing control was viewed as an attempt to reduce her sentence. Troy, under the terms of his plea deal, also received a life sentence. However, his subsequent behavior in prison became concerning when he was charged in 2015 for possessing a weapon, which raised concerns about his ability to rehabilitate. The sentencing had a profound impact on everyone involved in the tragedy. This situation serves as a stark reminder of how personal conflicts and impulsive choices can ruin even the strongest bonds. Taylor then was relocated to a women's correctional facility in Ohio. Throughout her early years in prison, she remained isolated, choosing to avoid interaction with the media and other inmates. In 2021, Taylor participated in a television interview regarding her case. During the interview, she acknowledged that her actions were serious but continued to justify them by discussing her conflicts with her mother and her emotional struggles. Although she had previously expressed remorse in court, Taylor reiterated her criticisms of her mother, calling her strict and unsupportive after her father's death. She also expressed a desire for her case to be reviewed, hoping for a chance at freedom. These statements caused controversy, with many perceiving them as indications of insincerity. Currently, Taylor spends her time involved in rehabilitation programs and working within the prison. Some view her as manipulative and insincere, while others believe she is seeking meaning in her life while incarcerated. Meanwhile, Brian, who is also serving a life sentence in a high-security prison, has kept a low profile since his conviction. He has avoided media interviews and has not publicly addressed his involvement in the crime. Prison staff describe Brian as a difficult inmate who often engages in conflicts and displays aggression. His name came up again in 2017 when reports revealed he had gotten into a fight with another inmate. This incident highlighted that his aggressive behavior had not improved since his sentencing. Like Taylor, Brian symbolizes the tragic inability to accept responsibility and the harmful impact one person can have on others. Troy, who played a direct role in the crime, was also sent to a maximum security prison. Even though he received a plea deal, his conduct in prison showed he hadn't changed. Since the incident, Troy has seldom been covered in the media. While some viewed his involvement in the crime as a result of being manipulated by Brian and Taylor, his readiness to carry out the fatal attacks raised concerns about his potential for rehabilitation. The memory of Christy Marks endures among her friends and surviving family. Her senior care business was sold after her death, with part of the proceeds going to charities that support victims of domestic violence. Christy is often remembered by her loved ones as a strong and compassionate woman who devoted her life to helping others. Years after Christy's passing, her story remains a warning about the need for open communication in families and the value of seeking professional help when conflicts escalate.